former member of New South Wales Parliament, a journalist, and the once host of Radio 2GB's Drive. He's a CEO, a chairman, and often seen on the ABC's The Drum. Stephen O'Doherty joins me in the lock-in. He talks about the not-for-profit sector and the importance of community in radio. I'm Brett Farrell, and this is The Lock-In.
Hello, Brett.
Stephen, how are you?
I'm really well.
Really? How are you going with your lock-in?
Well, it's interesting. I'm finding it hard to get my head around the new reality. I know we're all in exactly the same boat. Like, at any time, something's going to change and you won't be able to do X, Y, or Z. Today, my hairdresser was ringing up saying, we're shutting down, we can't do this anymore, but we might be open next week. And
what? How did they figure that out?
Well, and then, we got of course, the cabinet had met last night. What's actually happening there is I think they reacted to the news 2 days ago, choosing to close today. And then overnight, the cabinet decided, and that all got filtered out today. I felt like saying, haven't you seen last night's cabinet?
Yeah.
But this wasn't an argument that they wanted to have. So right now, I don't know whether I'm going to the hairdresser tomorrow or not. So, wow, life's an adventure.
Well, I was just looking at that. They've got the 30-minute appointments, though, Stephen, which to me is, I didn't know if that was the 30-minute appointment time or the maximum time they're now allowed to run late.
Yeah, you're allowed to. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? You're now allowed to go longer than 30 minutes.
Oh, well, there you go. So you can go and get your hair set.
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a sort of wash and cut for me.
Straight back and sides kind of guy.
But, no, not necessarily. But we don't do the wash thing now. Maybe I have to wash it before I go. I'm awaiting instruction.
Well, Stephen, you were once a member of the New South Wales State Parliament. Do you wish you were...
Life was so simple then, Brett.
Don't you wish you were back in the fray of it right now?
That's not an interesting question. I don't think I've missed it since I left. Do I wish? Yeah, right now is the interesting part, isn't it? So right now, the cabinet has extraordinary powers, and having been a part of the parliament and in a shadow cabinet, we were in opposition when I was in on the front bench. I was never in government on the front bench. I just know that all my instincts say, absolute power is a very anti-democratic idea. However, in a time like this, you need someone who will make the decisions and be responsible for them. So I can tell you that I've got confidence because in this state and also federally, I know the people involved. I think they're good people.
You think they've got things under control?
I didn't say that. I think they're good people.
But Stephen, these days you're now heavily involved in the not-for-profit sector. How is that going to cope at the moment as a sector with, I guess, everything that's going on?
Yeah, very, very tough indeed. You just think about the problems of fundraising at a time like this.
Yeah.
Sector I'm most involved in is the Christian radio sector, which is supported very heavily by fundraising. And that involves a couple of different appeals per year for each station. And those appeals rely on having a tally room where you have maybe, I'm guessing, 30 people in one room at a time, telephone operators, technicians, people taking calls, the people on the air. That will not happen. And the big fundraisers for all of the stations are coming up in June. So the tally room is very unlikely to happen. So that's just one little glimpse into one type of not-for-profit organisation, but there are many others, of course. And like you, I'm sure I'm getting emails from people saying, we need to be able to continue our work alleviating blindness in Nepal.
Yeah.
Please don't fail to give now. And of course, those people with the means and the heart to do so will do so generously. I think Australians have shown themselves to be really conscious of that over the years. But 10% of people now already are out of work. And I don't want to be, speaking too much doom and gloom into the ether, but the fact of the matter is we are headed for a recession. There can be no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And if it's prolonged, it becomes a depression. We haven't seen one of those in my generation, and I'm 60.
And you've been through the more recent global financial crisis as well.
I've been through a few financial busts and crises, and that one was hard. That was very hard. I remember the government stimulus that was, at that time I was working with the school sector, and the school sector benefited from government spending on capital works projects, which literally got communities going again because local builders were employed, and that kept cash flow going through. This government has a different approach. It's giving money to individuals and it's providing relief from unemployment. This is a deeper problem than the global financial crisis, for sure. And the amount of money that's been wiped out of markets alone, it shows us this is deeper than that.
And do you think for the charities you're involved with, and indeed the charities where you have friends sitting across other boards and operational roles, are they starting to see early signs of people withdrawing money or not being as able to
across
give?
The country. Yep, they're all talking about how they can batten down the hatches now in operational terms, cash flow terms, in order to survive, so that coming out of the other side, they're in a position to continue to do their charitable works.
What are they going to do? What will they do now to encourage fundraising to
No, there are
survive?
not too many. You can cut operational costs to a certain extent, but for most organisations, the primary operational cost is to do with staffing. So, there are people in the charitable sector that will face the prospect of being without work for a period of time.
And that's going to have broader implications for society?
Well, I mean, every sector is facing exactly the same problem. Every single sector, hairdressers right through. There are some, and we don't know yet what the government's next approach is going to be, but I think the way to read things, as someone who's observed politics and even been part of it, for most of my life, the next thing will be a tighter squeeze on movement. And the trick that they're trying to pull off here is to restrict the movement of people enough to have an impact on the propagation of this virus, which spreads at an exponential rate. One person infects two or three others, they go on to infect two or three others. Just do the maths. It's expanding at that rate. So if you stop, and the ways you can actually prevent that, there's a really good video from the Khan Academy on YouTube about this. If you look at Khan, Khan, and look at the video they posted a few days ago about how the exponential maths works here in the public health space, it explains it really well. So if you can stop the contact between people, that's one way you can affect the spread of the virus. This does nothing for shutting the virus down, but it shuts down the number of vectors, the number of carriers.
Yeah, now
that lets you keep things going. But at the same time, you want your economy to go. So if you're Scott Morrison, what do? You want to stop the spread of the disease, but you need to keep the economy going because we've got to have something left in order to create enough jobs for people once again when this is over.
And equally, people might think we've got to be around as well to have an economy. So it becomes a bit circuitous in some circles.
Well, it does. And at some point there is a sort of balancing act that you need to do. And it's like Solomon's choice. And you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Which of the alternatives do you choose? And anyone who wants to criticise our MPs and others who are making these decisions needs to think about the dilemma that they're facing.
Stephen, you mentioned earlier, and the community radio sector you're involved with, and I know you've had a former role, the host of 2GB's Drive show. What responsibilities and obligations and roles does the radio sector, the broadcasting sector, have in a time like this? What can it do to help and bring some hope, and in addition just to the very good information we all need to know?
Well, let's not skip over the very good information, because sometimes we don't get very good information from our media. In fact, I think in a way that when I was on radio in the 1980s through to the early 90s, and while we had a certain degree of shock jockism, nothing like we have today.
Were you ever a shock jock, Stephen?
No, I wasn't. No, very much not. So I would have described myself as a broadcast journalist and a news and current affairs journalist. That was my background. And the ethic of my craft is to provide factual information without fear or favour. So that's the opposite of being a shock jock in that, if you take my meaning. But what you've got to do is to give, and I believe this with every fibre of my being, and one of the reasons I went into Parliament was on the basis that the way the media was impacting on the way politics was played at the time was unhelpful to getting good outcomes from our governments. That concern's only increased as you see one after one governments almost bending over backwards to appease some person who gets on the radio and criticises them and can have the power of election or not if they misuse the power they have as a broadcaster.
Yeah, okay.
And we can see that happening now. We can see broadcasters who have in the early days, they allowed the idea to be propagated that coronavirus was a myth, that COVID-19 was a myth.
No, it's very much real.
Suffered as a result of that.
Do you think that has impacted us as a society? Maybe making our approach a bit slower than perhaps we might need?
Yes, I do. That's my gut feeling. Have a look at the United States of America, where their president is prone to appease those with that view.
His supporters.
Many of his supporters, conspiracy theorists. They don't like to be told stuff. They deny climate change, and many of them are denying that COVID-19 was a thing. Well, the United States is well behind other nations like Australia in its response, and the result is the rapid increase. Their hospital system, therefore, completely unable to cope with what it's facing. By comparison, we've acted swiftly and much better. And I grieve for our friends in the United States because of that. So that's what happens when you kind of don't listen to, and I say the same thing about climate and other issues. We were saying this exact same thing about the bushfires only a month or two ago. You don't listen, and this is what happens.
It's been a shocker of a year, the bushfires, the coronavirus. Do you think we should just reset 2020 and start again?
I did see someone saying, where is the on-off switch? We just want to press Control-Alt-Delete on 2020.
Yeah. I don't like this version. Let's go back to 2019's version. That was much more fun. Now, Stephen, radio's always been an interesting medium. It's very intimate and can make people feel comforted and part of a conversation, part of a community. Would you like to see radio doing a bit more of that inclusion and warmth as opposed to just getting out the good information we need?
Yeah, you're right. So firstly, good information. That's great because we want factual information. We want to listen to what the authorities are saying, not without questioning, by the way. You want to scrutinise.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you do all of that and let people make informed decision about their lives. This is what we want to do. But then there's this other thing that you can do. You can bring people together and demonstrate the good that's being done and say, in a sense, recreate this community in the virtual space. And here's a news flash. The people have written radio as a medium off.
Yeah.
But look, what are we doing now? It's podcast, whatever. This is radio. What's radio? It's people communicating with other people, primarily using audio.
Yep.
And audio, which can get to you when you can't use your eyes for pictures, and that might be because you're driving the car or preparing the dinner or whatever else. And it gets inside your head because it's so much more intimate than when people choose what picture. You create your own picture. And because it's intimate, it then instinctively creates relationship, and relationship between us as human beings is the most important touchstone we have to get through any crisis like this one.
But it's quite interesting. A lot of businesses and churches at the moment saying let's make a virtual experience of the usual family community experience. I admire the effort, I really do, and I think it's good to have something. But I think radio is probably far more advanced in making people feel part of something and community in a time where we don't really have much of an option at the moment. We're all stuck.
My friend, we're on a unity ticket there. I mean, radio has always been about that since the earliest times. And this, I did see someone in the industry saying only yesterday, I think, this is the time when radio comes back into its own.
But, we can demonstrate it. Let's do a little demo. Theatre of the mind. Who can imagine Stephen sitting in the hairdresser's chair, having his hair lathered with some shampoo, as the hairdresser slowly sculpts his scalp and massages all of that beautiful goodness and treatment in, with your hair now wet and slicked back and combed.
And then leans over and, I'm using this new conditioner today, and we've got some here if you want some on the way out.
Would you believe it? Would you just happen to believe we have some here? Hey, Stephen, now that we
smell it, but that's the thing, you can smell it.
Yeah.
Can you smell that? What does it smell?
Lavender. Can you smell the lavender?
I think there's a touch of apple in there, and they're very big on kind of that's fresh green grass type smell.
Well, as long as you're describing a shampoo and not a red wine, I'm thinking that sounds about right.
Yes, exactly.
Now, Stephen, we're all in some way or the other at the moment all locked in. So what are you doing at the moment to lock in? How are you coping? What are you doing to keep yourself busy and occupied?
I've got this problem. Sorry, it's not a problem. I have this thing that's happened. In the last 18 months, I've decoupled myself from paid work. So if you ask what,
a conscious decoupling from paid work.
A conscious decoupling. And I've been trying to find a new radical level of contentment. That's the phase I'm in, seeking radical contentment, or radically seeking contentment. You can have those words in any order you wish. Contentedly
seeking radicalism. No, not that one.
No, not that one. What does that mean? Well, I've retired from work. But I'm retired from paid work. So I'm on a number of boards. I'm on 4 boards. They're all not-for-profit, pro bono boards. I chair 3 of them at the moment. And that's pretty full on. So what I'm doing at the moment is a lot of board work as the chair, talking with the CEO and others, the CEOs and others, about how our particular organisations, because these are public companies limited by guarantee, registered charities. So we're doing all the things that you have to do as a director of a company. We're making sure the company survives this period. So there's a lot of extra work involved in that. And I'm not minding it, but that's what I'm doing. Ask me what I'm doing. I'm doing Zoom conferences all day, talking to people about that sort of stuff.
And how's your wife enjoying seeing you around a bit more?
My wife is a public servant, and she is in a senior role, and she's also working from home. And she never stops in conferences, phone meetings. But I mean, in her case, it's exactly what she does at work, but she's just doing it at a different desk.
No, that's one thing about working in the government. I guess it never stops, no matter what the crisis is going on around you.
Yeah, and the nature of what they're doing at the moment is a little different because of the circumstances. So, here's a shout out to the public servants. They're working jolly hard. Yeah,
I must admit, when I see the politicians on the TV, and I think about my own circumstances and my own family, and I'm just trying to preserve that in some cases most days. I don't know how they're busy running a country and thinking about everything else.
I am interested in this question. Let's go back to the Great Depression, and a lot of things changed about the way our world worked. And starting with the New Deal and so on, it actually sort of generated an entirely new way of looking at how communities work together and sparked new industries and stuff. But there was a stoicism that came out of that period that stayed with that generation forever.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law still saves bits of string. I feel quite sure of that. But what will survive out of this about the way we do things together, the way we do life, the way we do meetings? I mean, people have started saying, well, gosh, we had this down for a 2-hour meeting, but we've finished the business in 45 minutes on this phone call. Yeah, well, that was efficient. Let's do that again.
Yeah, I just wonder if people will stuff the day with more meetings, though. Just shorter ones, more of them.
I hope not.
Well, you never know. Although I do wonder if we're going to become a generation that saves strings. I kind of feel like we're the generation who's been inconvenienced by this, and once it all blows over, we'll just get back to our lives as usual.
I don't know. I mean, the jury's out for me on that, and it's probably too early to tell. what happened when they started asking us seriously to socially isolate? It was always there, but when they really started clamping down, they closed the beaches. What happened?
Everyone went to the pub.
By and large, yeah, but these were by and large millennials, as I understand it. And then we've seen a spike in the number of millennials diagnosed with the disease in recent days. Now, given the lag time, you know, you ask yourself, oh, did actually going to Bondi Beach, was that a great idea when they told you not to?
Or maybe,
was that a great idea?
Or maybe the parties afterwards.
Well, once they survive, they'll... Yeah, I mean, I just wonder how it'll impact those people and the way they parent and the way they talk about what this time that we're all in now. And we're only a week in.
Yeah, I think it feels like I'm counting in dog years. It's 3 or so days at home at the moment, but it feels like 912 years.
Well, yeah. So what am I doing? Yeah, I'm doing phone conferences and Zoom, whatever. I'm also the musical director of a community concert band.
Oh, come on.
And what
do you play?
I play clarinet.
Well, let's get it.
But I'm the conductor.
Come on, get the clarinet out. Just give us a bit. Play us a bit of music.
I don't have it here. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere on the other side.
You've lost your clarinet.
The dog ate my homework. I'm not sure. I would if it takes a while to set up. Here's what I've done.
Okay.
We faced the situation where we had to stop all rehearsals and all performances. And that's several nights a week that our people are not getting together when they would normally get together. These people are community members. They have all kinds of jobs. They're lawyers, they're doctors, they're retired people, they're magistrates, they're street sweepers, they're whatever, you know. And doing music is the thing that keeps them all happy and sane, including me. Literally. I mean, I'm prone to depression, and doing music all the time as a foreground part of your life.
Yeah,
that's a thing that keeps me mentally fit, mentally healthy.
Yeah.
So suddenly you turn that off, and it's not just playing the music. Although that has, as you know, that's got such an extraordinary effect on your brain chemistry that it actually creates the feel-good hormones, and it's a great hedge against, a whole range of things, including some people say memory loss. So we've got a number of retirees and older people that have started playing instruments in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Anyway, all that's turned off. And we're not seeing each other anymore. So what are we doing? Well, we started a Facebook group.
Yeah.
And then someone said, we need to keep playing. So I've just finished yesterday rescoring a piece that I wrote many years ago. It's called Sofa Cats. And because it's about the cats that just lays around and sit on the sofa all day.
Yeah, that's all of them.
A bit like me, if I think about it.
No judgment. No judgment here.
Friend, you don't have to judge me. I can judge myself quite adequately. So anyway, I put that up in a Dropbox, the sheet music. And I also, through my computer, I recorded a MIDI version of that piece of music.
Yeah.
And now I've issued the challenge to them all. I've said, listen through to this music in one ear, like put headphones in, and play along with the music. You've got the sheet music, play along with the recording, and send me the recording of you playing. And so people have started to do that.
Oh, wow.
And when I get enough representative instruments, I'll start stitching it together, and so we'll have a virtual performance of this piece. So watch this space.
That's kind of cool. I want to hear it. I want to be the first to hear it, and I also want to be one of the first people sitting in the front row.
Oh yeah.
When we're all back together again, we can actually hear the musicians all come together and play it. That would be fantastic. Stephen O'Doherty, thank you so much for joining me on the Lock-In, which is all of us together, locked in.
Help.
I'm Brett Farrell, and this is The Lock-In.